Captains of Industry, brought to you by Airtel.
Hello and the warmest welcome to this edition of Captains of Industry. Now, with global revenues estimated at $22 billion in the last year, Ernst Young has definitely earned their place as the 9th largest company in the United States for 2010. They are one of the big 4 accounting firms the world over, you know that. Ernst Young is also leading the charge on issues of entrepreneurship. Providing insights on the new world is Ajen Sita, CEO, Ernst Young for Africa. Ajen, thanks so much for your time. I mean, when I look at your name, it sounds like the name of some spiritual guru. What does it mean? Where does it come from?
Loretta, to be honest, I've done some research to try and figure out the meaning of the name. But as far as I got is my parents were reading a book in their early 20s and came across this name, thought it sounded cute, and there I go. I have found that it's a shortened version of a longer name, but I cannot yet find another Ajen, and I cannot find the proper meaning of it, so my quest continues. All right,
so other than the character in the book, it's fairly unique.
That's right.
And does that define you? Do people look at you and say, I've never met somebody like you before?
Well, I can tell you safely that I've not met another Ajen. I'm not sure if people would say that they've not met another person like me. Yeah. But I suppose having a unique name does put one under some pressure to also be unique in some way. And my uniqueness maybe is just my passion for what I do, for engaging with people and trying to make a difference. So that's what I could find so far.
When you ask your PA, honestly, on those days when the two of you are just engaging in a bit of frivolity and levity, and you say to her, am I a tough boss? How would she respond?
I think she'd say to you that I never raise my voice, and I think anyone who deals with me will say that. There's a sense of calm and a sense of being in control, and I think if anyone in leadership positions needs to demonstrate that level of consistency. So I'm not someone who shouts or barks instructions, and on the tough days it's all about just getting a lot more focus to get things done.
I've obviously interacted with you through the various World Entrepreneurship programs led by Ernst Young, and when I look at you with your colleagues, I see autonomy and I see informality. I get a sense that you let your people just run with things. Is that your leadership style?
Absolutely. You know, the secret of success, as I've seen it, is to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. And if they're smarter than you, let them be. So I see my role as a leader to essentially create the platform, the environment in which successful people can thrive. So give them a direction and then allow them the freedom to make the choices to get you where you want to be. That's a formula that's worked well for us. I also try and make sure that despite the relative size of our organization that you referred to a little earlier, that we retain a youthful sense of energy and entrepreneurship. As big as you get, what will differentiate organizations is the level of innovation and entrepreneurship to still be hungry to succeed. And I think we've created that culture in our organization.
You did say earlier on you remain calm and in control. In control. It's a bit sinister, that one. You like to be in control?
Absolutely. You know, in today's day and age, we're balancing a number of priorities. I'm responsible for a business that has just over 4,000 people and operates in 30 different countries across Africa. If you're going to be relevant and connected into as many as 30 markets in this continent, there's no doubt you have to be on top of all the developments, political, economic, human resource that are happening across this broad continent. So you do need to commit serious personal time to make sure that you're making a difference. And if being in control helps me do that, so be it.
Many leaders that I've interacted with will say consensus is how they also prefer to run their business. But if they were to probe, they know every fine detail, probably down to the birthday of the janitor. Do you exercise that level of oversight, knowing every single thing that's happening?
Well, I'll let you know a little secret. I do have literally all of my partners right across Africa's birthdays in my calendar. So many of them have been surprised by a phone call on their birthday. But on a more serious note, there's no doubt as a leader you've got to know how to get into the detail, but need to also know how to stand above it so you can keep your eye on the long-term vision. To allow people the freedom to operate, you must also know the environment in which they're operating, and that's the level of the detail knowledge. But I think a good leader's view is to paint the direction and keep people motivated that the direction's still relevant. And so a balance of detail and high level is required.
That people stay motivated and relevant. In Africa today, what does that mean? Because over the last 2 years, there's been a lot of consolidation into making Ernst Young one big pan-African organization. You said 30 countries, there's over 4,000 people. What has that meant?
Well, I think all of us across Africa have realized that it's time for Africa, as we've said in one of our publications this year. As the global economy has shifted, with almost a depressing state in the mature markets of the world, and much of the focus of emerging markets has been India, China, Brazil, we've said, we as a firm need to play our role in bringing the attention to Africa. We see the incredible opportunity, whether it's natural resources or people, talent on the ground. And so we've worked hard to get all 4,000 of our people in the 30 countries to see that opportunity first in our own organization, in their own markets. Now we're working hard to tell that story to the world. And where we tell the story, we've always met with people who are interested to know more, who see the opportunity, share that excitement with us. Now, when you see that passion, you can't help but be excited for what the continent offers.
Obviously, people probe your mind. They want to know what you're thinking, from the World Economic Forum to a variety of others. And consistently, you keep on banging on about BRICS, that this is the new world order, that Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa are redefining the landscape, the space. In Africa, how tangible is that?
Well, I would start off by saying I have a concern as an African that Africa is not claiming its rightful position when it comes to the BRICS or emerging markets as a whole. Yet it has so much to offer. So we often talk about comparisons with India and China, and the reality is those are sovereign nations, they're single countries. Africa's got 55 countries that it needs to bring together in a way to be competitively positioned, to attract foreign direct investment or other forms of attention for investment that's sorely needed. So I still think there's a lot more to be done in Africa, where we're starting to do some of the things, like building regional trading blocks and hubs, but we're not doing enough of it, and certainly not doing it fast enough if we're to compete for capital with India and China, for example.
I mean, I want to echo your sentiments there, because often I feel in the media, we speak to leaders and they pay lip service to this idea of regional integration. We keep on hearing it. But when you look at the numbers, it's not happening.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're talking to a big retail investor, and let's take East Africa as an example, they would look at any one of the countries, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania. Individually, the markets are too small for them to consider making an investment. These are markets with populations of, at best, 40, 50 million people. They're very distributed rural communities. And so there's hard to address that market. But if you put 5 countries together in East Africa, the ones I've just mentioned, it's now a market of 200 million people. Now, no matter who you are, which global organization, an addressable market of 200 million is attractive. These are growing consumers, growing middle class. You've got disposable income to spend on your products. You want to be in those markets. So it's with that backdrop that we've been talking a lot about creating accelerated regional hubs if we to attract this capital. Again, foreign investors will look at India and say, well, that's 1 billion people in one country. If I enter it, I deal with, I deal with my entry into the market once. Thereafter, I've just got to find a way of connecting with the consumers. Our dilemma is you enter each country one at a time. We've got to find a way of simplifying those with the regional blocks so you get access to bigger markets quicker.
Some of your publications are talking about the trends we're going to see economically in the year ahead, and we're told lots more in the private equity space. Private equity is very interested in technology, very interested in real estate. We'll see a lot by way of mergers and acquisitions. So as we see companies come together, foreign companies acquire local companies, what sort of advice do you give them? Because as you're saying, it's cumbersome doing business in Africa, it's bureaucratic. How do they get around it?
Other than obviously come and speak to Ernst Young. What we've done is recognize there is a complexity to doing business across this continent. The 54 countries have got different regulatory environments, different tax rules, different labor rules, contract enforcement. So the immediate thing that happens when an investor off the continent looks at Africa is the sense of this is too difficult and backs off. What we've been doing with many of the largest companies around the world is trying to reduce that complexity. We've been doing that with local knowledge, and I think this is the lesson. Make sure that you're partnering with local people. So all of Ernst Young's 4,000 people across Africa are local Africans who work in those markets and are connected to our global organization. With the local knowledge, you're able to navigate some of this complexity far more easily, far more seamlessly. The other thing I would say is look at regional markets, don't look at individual countries. Increasingly, these trade blocs are opening up, with whether it's SADC, COMESA, or the East Africa community. Understand how you can access a broader market because you'll find a more attractive market. And then do the homework. Every country has got its unique dynamics in Africa. Do the homework because the local communities are very well informed of the best that there is to offer around the world.
Right.
One of the things I often say to foreign investors, if you drive through some of the township communities, even in South Africa, the one thing you'd find consistent, in addition to the shacks that you might see, is every one of those literally have a satellite dish. And people know what the best in the world has to offer, and they will judge you by that. But your product needs to be tailored for the local conditions.
One question on tax, which is quite technical in the work that you do. Some would say, over and above the regulatory inconsistencies, this is the one area where we're just not sure what's going on, especially in the minerals and commodities boom. Then one country introduces a windfall tax, then the other one falls away. Then governments have this dilemma of how do they collect revenue. Then the corporates are double taxed, then individuals are taxed, then we're reducing tax. This is a put-off because ultimately people are here to do business. Yes, they must operate fairly, they must give back, but the governments must also know what it is that they want.
So that's absolutely right. You talk to any business and they would say to you, all they're looking for in taxes is consistency and clarity. There's a recognition for as many countries in the world, frankly, you are going to have different tax regimes, and they're dependent on what the developmental stage of that particular economy is. So I think it's aspirational to try and imagine a situation where across Africa we'd have harmonized tax laws and regulations. I don't think we're going to see that in our lifetime. On the positive front, what we do have here in Africa that is not well known of is an initiative, in fact, led by our own SARS commissioner called ATAF, the Africa Tax Administrative Forum, where they've brought the various tax collectors from across Africa together in a body that is set as its purpose to try and harmonize tax legislation, especially transfer pricing and cross-border taxes. So I think there's some work being done there. The dilemma, though, certainly in the last 3 years, as governments have felt increasing pressure to collect tax revenues, given the depressed state of the world economy, they have taxed the softer targets, and the mining industry are highly cash generative, they're highly visible, they're big employers, and and given Africa's economy has largely resource based, there has been shifts in the whole mining tax arena. There's no doubt though, all of those companies just want clarity and consistency.
Right.
And after that, let entrepreneurship thrive.
All right, after the break we're going to be getting some clarity from Ajen Sita. Did you know his favorite hobby is astronomy? We'll find out more after the break. Stay with us.